welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Stacey J. Dempsey, and today, thankfully, like always, I have the one and only Dad. Good morning and good afternoon to you, Dad.
Morning, honey.
And we
Morning,
have a
everybody.
little bit of a different setup this time around on this episode for a good reason. Jennifer, my sister, and obviously Dad's daughter, unable to join us on this episode because she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl just a few short weeks ago. And thankfully, both Jennifer and baby are doing absolutely fantastic. And Miss Lila is currently our new obsession that we call Jennifer and ask her if we can just come over and stare at the baby. Um, so with all of that being said, unfortunately, Jennifer will not be able to join us today, but she does anticipate to be able to join us in the near future. But for now, we will leave her be mom and enjoy that time with both our kids. So today, Dad and I are going to hold it down for our yearly recap of all of the topics that we talked about this past year. And number one, thank you to all of our viewers and our listeners who have continually showed up, that are in our listening to our podcast, downloading the podcast, watching us on YouTube, watching us on Facebook. We want to thank you guys so very, very much for just another phenomenal year. We are really grateful that we have an opportunity to bring this out to the world, and that people actually want to hear what we have to say. And hopefully the things that we have to say and the experiences we get to share are helpful and useful to all of those who tune in. So thank you guys so very much. But like always, we had another really, really cool year, a really nice year as far as the podcast goes. Because although business for the most part can be the same no matter what the industry is, the challenges never really go away. The things that need to be figured out never go away, but the risk and rewards also don't go away. It's just how are they showing up in the current day and age. And so that was one of the topics, Dad, that we talked about was, the world is for always changing, right? The landscape of business is always changing, and kind of how do we manage that? And I know, Dad, in that episode, you talked a little bit about just past experiences that, when, had a challenge, got through it. Guess what? Another challenge is coming down the way, but how you just could, show up differently, once you kind of been through a couple of things, right?
Yes, absolutely. And again, I just really am amazed that here we are in finishing up our sixth season of the podcast, which again, that's awesome. Very proud of that. Certainly very proud of my two daughters, of course, as we've navigated the podcast with the goal of helping people. I mean, that really is the goal of helping people who have a desire or are entrepreneurs and running businesses. It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. And the more hopefully we can put out there, whether it's a topic or just one idea, one nugget that comes out of the podcast that helps someone in their business and in their life, it makes it all well worth it. So again, just really, really happy we've been able to do this. And just for our listeners, just as a quick reminder, especially for those that maybe have, only looked at it over the past or listened in over the past couple years. This really the podcast was born out of when Jennifer started her hair business and asked me to come on and be a partner, and we were navigating getting her up and running. What I quickly took notice of was that the challenges that she's facing in her business, and is the same challenges I face in our business in terms of you know running the business of running your business. Yeah, I mean her output is the beauty business. Ours is insurance and financial services, but but the business side of it, really a lot of parallels. And I just thought to myself, wow, this would be something that would be good to turn into a podcast, and was kind of thinking that half-heartedly, but here we are 6 years later, and we've had a podcast. So again, just real quick history there of how this whole thing got started. But yes, and and looking back over our year, again, I just was reminded of all the things we did cover in our different topics, and again, just thinking, wow, we covered a lot of territory with different topics that each one, as I reminded myself of what we did, was really, I thought, very germane to what business is looking like today. And then, as you just led us into, Stacy, the world around us is changing. Well, that's always been the case, going back beyond our time on this earth. But I think probably the better way, maybe now, to think about that, and been thinking about that, is the world is changing rapidly,
Yeah.
fast. We are not, yeah, change has always happened, but it was at a much slower pace. We used to call it a linear change, just kind of incrementally change over time. Where now, with technology, and especially AI, whoo, we are at warp speed on some changes. And
Yeah.
so it definitely is something that entrepreneurs really need to embrace, if they're going to thrive, with the change, because, you know, we see it around us. We see, storefronts close up. We see, the impact on malls, branch banks, you know, things that have just quickly become outdated, or things have changed, and all of a sudden, you know, not relevant anymore. And so I think that's one of the questions you should be asking yourself in this area of change: is how can I continue to be relevant, in today's world? Because that is what you want. We have to be relevant in the eyes and the minds of the people and the customers, the clients that we deal with. Um, so again, very, very germane topic. I was looking at a couple of the nugget alerts, as we call them, and one of them that jumped out at me is creativity and marketing can breathe new life into a business. And so I know Jennifer often says, if you're not in social media, you're not in business. So that's one area of that you need to be embracing if you're going to have a successful business. And the beautiful thing about it is it really does allow you to be very creative, because the cost of your creativity is not so high. Not that long ago, if you took a chance and tried to be creative, it cost you tens of thousands of dollars to put a marketing campaign, potentially, or it costs you a lot of money and so you kind of stayed with what was tried and true, and didn't take much risk. Where now, the cost of advertising through social media and other means are very nominal, and so it allows you to take more risk. And if it doesn't work, you didn't bust the bank doing it. So I think but you have to be creative. The other one that jumped out was on the collaboration, um, being, again, understanding what other businesses are doing, talking to other business owners, networking with business owners, podcasts like this, and just seeing, what you can be, how you can be embracing change, um, for your business, and understanding that the clients and the customers you're serving, they're going through rapid change too, with how they have to do things and think about things. So if you can kind of bring that together and continually be evolving in that area, your business is going to probably be pretty successful.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. And which leads us into another episode where we talked a lot about, the risk the risk reward spectrum of business, and how, we talked a lot about in that episode about how, you and Jennifer share the story about you asking Jennifer, what's the worst that could happen? You're trying something new, you're switching out, who you get your color, or who you buy your products from. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? And so we talked a lot about in that episode, just understanding what the full risk is, but then also what could the reward be? What could be the worst thing that happens if you make this change, or if you don't make this change? Because we also talked about, in that episode, just having the mindset of, understanding your business all the way around, and that there is a cost, there is a risk to making a change, and on doing the hard part. There's also a risk in not doing it. And we talked a lot in that episode about, in every risk there is an opportunity for growth. And it seemed like a lot of our listeners had some feedback on, they never really thought about it like that, like the ultimate question of, what's the worst that could happen? And if that does happen, is it really the worst thing ever to my business? And it's that kind of seemed to, in some ways, just kind of cut and dry without a lot of fluff, asking ourselves, just simply that question, what's the worst case scenario here?
Well, that's right. And I think that, because, asking that question, really does put it in perspective, because most times the risk is not going to put you out of business, because if you're taking that level of risk, that you're laying it all on the line, then probably shame on you for doing that. But you don't have to really go there. And I think the other thing, especially for people that have challenges taking risk, is start small. Start, and we put that, that was one of the things we talked about, get used to taking some smaller risk that, if you fail, it's not going to certainly put you out of business. Because at the end of the day, there isn't any failure with risk. It's either, if it didn't work, you learned, and you learned what didn't work, so that now hopefully the next reiteration of that risk is going to be moving you towards success. And so understanding that risk is never really a losing proposition, unless you're betting the farm. And if you're betting the farm, then that's a whole different story. And what I mean by the farm is everything, that if this doesn't work, I'm losing everything. I'm losing my home. I'm losing, I'm going bankrupt. I mean, that I don't recommend. You should never take that level of risk, especially if you have plenty to lose, and you have a family you're caring for, and that type of thing. But taking those incremental risks that don't have a huge downside, will always produce something good. Either it's the reward or the learning that comes from it. So very important. And one of the things we put in we talked about, and I'd probably want to just spend a minute on that, is we put timing is key, taking risk when your business is growing. That is true for sure, because one of the things that we want to be careful with is, as we start to grow, we like the feeling of growing, right? We're like, wow, finally things have turned and I'm growing, the business is growing. Well, that is a crucial time to then say, okay, what do I have to do? Because that growth will eventually plateau, and it'll top off if you don't decide along the way of, when am I going to re-enter into something else that's going to create risk that might set us back a little bit, but it'll take us to another level. So that is true. But also, I think it's important that, especially if it's external things like the economy, a lot of times people will like, okay, we got to go super conservative now, right? Because the economy's bad. We got to watch every penny. Well, that's when you really, I think, also want to assess, is this the right time, if it makes sense financially, you're not betting the farm, to take some risk. Why? Because nobody else is. Everybody else is taking the
Mm.
posture of, all right, we're gonna lay low. We're not going to be investing any money right now. The economy stinks. And but when you look at those businesses that say, hey, you know what? Let's get out there because nobody else is. And then when this thing turns around, who's going to be top of mind? It's going to be us, right? So again, not just in good times if you're business, yes, but if there's external things that you can continue to take some level of risk, you should do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point, Deb. And talking about risk. I know one episode that people or that our viewers really loved was the negotiations. And they loved the story of how you and Jennifer were able to get into the space that she's in now, and just how that negotiation went. That they said, here's a leasing contract, and a lot of feedback was like, I didn't realize that I could say, hey, can we change a few of these things? Can we? I think the biggest point that you in that scenario was, hey, these landlords want to make it X amount of money by the end of 3 years. How do we still get them to that number, but make it a little bit easier for us in the beginning when we don't have any revenue? I mean, our viewers and our listeners were like, I didn't know you could do, I didn't know you could do that. And that again, it's just another idea that being in business, that everything can be a negotiation, and also to advocate for your business in those negotiations, for as a win-win situation. And that was the example of you and Jennifer getting into the space that she's in now, to say, hey, we're all getting to the finish line kind of where we want to. It just might look a little different here in the beginning and even maybe towards the middle. But that whole point of that episode, which again, a lot of great feedback on that, was just the importance of negotiations in your business, and understanding all of the details of a contract, advocating for your business, and also never to negotiate against yourself. Let them put it on the table first, what they're looking for, and then go from there. Because I think what you had mentioned in that episode, Dad, was that kind of what you're willing to give might not even be something that they're even want to do, or that they would, you could come in much less, you come in better than what you originally thought, by not putting your chips on the table the first time around. So a lot of
Well,
good
there's no
insight
doubt.
on
I
that
think,
too.
yeah. The key to negotiation is that you go into it never with a win-lose attitude. I want to win, and which means you're going to lose. Think about it as, how can we both win? In the negotiation. That's always the foundation of successful negotiation. And it may be different, but that is always the key. The other thing is that, like you said, don't ever negotiate against yourself. So if somebody says, well, make me an offer, no, say, tell me what your expectation is. Tell me what you're wanting, because I can make them an offer and they'll be like, wow, that was far more than what I was hoping for. So, all right, here it is, signed right here.
Right.
So make sure, they're always giving you, that you're having them give you something first to work with. And then always remember that the number one negotiating tool you have is walkaway power. The ability to walk away from the deal, right? And be okay with it. If you're in a situation where you have to do something, obviously you're not going to be in the best negotiating position. But if the other side knows, hey, I can just walk away. I can go find another, space to work with, because this is where we're at and we're not going to move off of this number, so, if that's not it, then we'll just move on. And so that walk away power is a very powerful tool. And the sooner the other side can understand you have that, the more likely you're going to get closer to what you want in that negotiation.
Yep, a really good point there. I like that, the walkaway power, which, hopefully if you've been in business long enough, even in just your personal life, whether it's buying a car or, that's what kind of comes to mind for me, is like, this is not something I have to do. And like you said, just walk away. I love that, the walkaway power. Which leads me to another very popular episode of when, just navigating setbacks in your business. Since we've had the podcast, since we've been doing the podcast, we have navigated COVID. We have navigated, change in presidents. We have navigated just, weather-related issues, where things have not been typical in certain parts of the world, or certain parts of even here in the United States. Erratic different weather causing problems in different areas, like lots of things that could be considered bumps in the road, setbacks, challenges. And so when we talk about just navigating those, what really comes to mind, number one, having the right mindset. And we did have an episode where we talked about daily habits of, that kind of plays into, how to manage those, but, navigating those setbacks in your business. And I think one of the biggest points from that episode that at least the listeners really enjoyed was that, how do I find the opportunity in this setback? Now, as someone who has been in business with her family for 22 years now, there was a time when there's been a challenge that comes up and I am upset. And it's like, well, what's the opportunity? It's like, no, I want to be mad right now. I don't want to look for the opportunity. However, due to personal and professional growth on myself, that is true. Let me, rather than focusing on what is really irking me and what is making me upset and what's giving me the setback, how can I find some type of opportunity, or at least keep my mind open to be able to see what the opportunity is. And I think that the viewers and the listeners really was like, that can be hard to practice in the moment. But I am here to testify. Yes, you can get past it. At some point you go, yes, I just need to find the opportunity, not waste my energy on the difficulty and all of that. Because certainly many setbacks in business, right, Dad, over number of years, and how, things have either things have worked out to be fine or worked out even better than if this had never happened.
Yeah, that's right. And, and I think it's important, not easy. Everybody hear me, not easy, but important to understand that it's just part of it, and again, we're not even talking about, monumental setbacks. It's just the daily, you get up, you prepare for your day, you have an agenda for your day. And as soon as you hit the office or as soon as you hit your place of business, boom, there's a problem, right? There's somebody's upset or there's this situation. And so just understanding that's just the way it is. I mean, and everybody faces them, right? It doesn't, not just entrepreneurs, we face them in life. There's just setbacks that come that nobody's invited, but here they are. So mindset is critical, obviously. And understanding that, first of all, embracing them, saying this is part of the deal. So, but I'm going to approach setbacks not as something that's going to beat me up, but that's going to empower me, because I know entrepreneurs are leaders, entrepreneurs are managers, which is going to be an upcoming podcast, by the way. The difference.
Love it.
That'll be in season 7. But
yeah,
but the point is that all those roles, that one of the top parts of the job description is being a good problem solver,
Right.
is being navigating setbacks. And so, just embracing that and maybe even spend time, whether it's, reading about it or, reading books around navigating things. There's all kinds of stuff out there, on how to manage and lead through challenges. And let's face it, when we look at some of those strongest leaders out there, the reason they're strong leaders is because they managed major setbacks and problems, and were able to do that very successfully. So just understanding it and trying to embrace it, getting good at it, I think is good. But like you said, Stacy, don't it can be emotional too. I mean, they're so allow that. I've always found, all right, this has got me stirred. So let me just let the stirring do what it needs to do. My key is try not to respond or react when I'm in that place. Let me get through that. If that's an hour, a day, whatever, sleep on it, whatever it may be, let me kind of get through that, and then hopefully then I can have some clarity on how to move on from there or how to deal with it. But if I respond out of my emotion, that's typically not going to be a good start to the situation, typically. So,
Yeah.
So again, but
Typically and
fight it.
traditionally.
Right.
Yes, it has
But
not served
it.
any of us Dempseys well to respond when emotional.
No
So
doubt.
how about
But
it?
try not to fight it either. Don't fight
That's
it like,
right.
oh, I shouldn't, I should be embracing this and what's wrong with me. Don't beat yourself up. Just because things are frustrating. So be frustrated, get through the frustration, and then clarity will prevail.
Right. Yep.
And the other thing
Excellent
we
point.
had on
And
here, not to drag this one out, but is also involve your team. If there's things going on, don't try to just be the captain of the ship, but get your team involved, share with what's going on, get their feedback, involve them, because there may be some simple solutions that you just don't realize that they have because they're in that space, in that daily grind, that they maybe have good feedback. So don't try to walk it out all by yourself just because you're the business owner, you're the leader, you're the manager, whatever the case may be.
yep. Great point. And, and we've talked about so many other wonderful things this past season. And, where, like Dad said, what are the strengths of the people that you collaborate with, the people that work alongside you? What does flexibility of time look like now in the workplace? How training of staff and employees, and how do we maximize that? And all of the other things in between. We have touched on or tried to touch on a little bit of everything. So if you've missed any episodes, we encourage you to go back and download or take a listen to us on YouTube. But again, we just want to thank you guys so very much for another successful, wonderful season 6. We have some great topics and conversations waiting for you in season 7. So until we are together again, and Dad has something to say one more
I just want to wrap up, and
yeah.
We can end it here. Is we started this about talking about change. So I'm just saying it more clearly that in today's changing environment, entrepreneurship is a really amazing way, to move forward. Entrepreneurship is going to be where it's at, so to speak, because I just see, yes, it's nice to have the job and the steady income, but I'm just seeing more and more how that change is impacting that segment and embracing, the entrepreneurial spirit. So again, if you're thinking about it, then I would say start slow, but listen to us. We'll get you there. But again, Stacy, thank you.
Absolutely. And as
Man,
our wonderful Yeah, we'll get you there. So will Country Road. So thank you guys for a great season 6. We'll see you in season 7. Be kind to each other, be kind to yourselves, and we'll see you in our next episode. Bye-bye.